Welcome back to the Georgia Show. Thanks for joining us today. We got a packed show today. Bill Quinn has all kinds of information, and it's about the elections. Bill, those pesky elections, they still aren't solved, are they?
Well, nothing's changed, and unless something changes, they will not be solved in my humble view. So nothing's changed, so we should expect nothing different. And you start looking at the detail, and the signs are all there of some sort of nefarious work behind the curtain.
Well, we're going to travel from LA back to Georgia, around the nation today, and give you a lot of updates on what's happening in elections around the country. We're brought to you by the Georgia Record, georgiarecord.com. Please sign up for our social media, CDM1 on Rumble, CDM on YouTube. Please, even if you don't watch us there, go subscribe. It helps us out a lot. CDM_press on X, and the Georgia Show, Georgia Record on X. And please sign up for our no ad subscriptions. We're having a lot of success with this recently. We really want to push this. my.cdm.press. CDM's gotten so big, we have a big nut every month to hit on the storage cost with all of the content we've been putting up. So that helps us pay for that. my.cdm.press, and sign up for our no ad subscriptions. You get access to all of our content with no ads. Well, let's get right to it. Bill, what do we got?
All right, that sounds great. So we're going to welcome in a special guest today, Chris Mora. Hang on a second. Chris, thank you for taking time to join us, my friend.
Hey, guys. How are you?
We are hanging in there. One of the reasons we wanted to bring you on is you were instrumental in bringing forth a case against Mr. Raffensperger when it became apparent that he has a secret bunker, I think is what it's being referred to, where on election night the confidants go down and monitor or do some sort of work with regard to incoming tabulations on voting. And they did not want to make that available even to state election board meeting members. And so, to your credit, you jumped on it. You got legal resources to engage, and filed a suit against Mr. Raffensperger to bring that transparency to the voters, including the state election board. I'm going to stop there and turn it over to you and tell us, what made you decide to do this, to what happened.
So, well, it was a combination of also with Greg Dolezal. And also Kelly Gambrell, local, I think, commission race in Cobb. We were trying to find a federal, a state, and a local race. So we'd have all the candidates combined to kind of go after this. I mean, I learned about this, and I think Greg says he's also learned about this at the State Board of Elections when they informed us that they were being denied access to the night of the election, where all the numbers come in from all over the counties, basically having no oversight as to who's watching over the numbers coming in, because it's very unrealistic, which is kind of funny. Even when we went to court, and it was a little head, but they made the suggestion, well, why can't a candidate just go ahead and monitor every county in the state and then add up the totals yourself? Well, again, unless I'm inviting 140 plus of my friends with a laptop, that's absolutely insane. It's always been done this way. Everyone looks at the Secretary of State's website to kind of see what the numbers, and you would think either state parties or the State Board of Elections would have access. And that was very concerning to me. It was very concerning to Greg. And we said, again, there should be no reason someone isn't overseeing and watching what he's doing.
And it begs the question, why would that not be appropriate? Why would Raffensperger and company not wish that?
What is there to hide? If there's nothing to hide, it should be open, right? Mm-hmm. Again, if all you're doing is taking in totals from each of the counties across the state, shouldn't be a big deal. But for some reason it is. So we filed a lawsuit, really restraining order, or asking for a temporary restraining order the date before the primary, which we actually won in the morning time. We were notified, our attorney David Oles was notified at about, I would say, between 10 and 11 o'clock that we won the case and that they would be allowed access in to oversee the operations of the Secretary of State in the secret bunker.
And the judge actually signed this order that we have up on
the
screen
order,
now, yes?
Signed the order, and then all of a sudden I started getting notifications about 3 o'clock that it was rescinded. So something happened, something happened to all of a sudden put a kibosh on that. So again, it was, unfortunately, I did not make the runoff, but Greg did. And so did Kelly. And we just decided, and it was important to me just because, and I've been on your show many times and we've tried to do stuff in other counties. We need to have a resolution to this. It's getting really disgusting because people still gives them doubts as to, does my vote even count? Does it matter? And there's such a fight to block access to things that should be, by Georgia law, we should have access to and have some oversight. There's nothing. And the more they fight to keep us away, the more I know something's wrong. So, again, this fight's still not done. Because again, they may get away with this and nothing will happen and we'll go through this runoff. But again, we're going to have a general election coming up. We have to make some change now. Otherwise, it's just never going to change. I even found out while we were in court and talking with, or the Secretary of State's attorneys were talking, prior to 2020, it was very common for the State Board of Elections to be there the night of the elections. But ever since Raffensperger got in, things have changed. Why?
That's precisely the question. What is the current status of the case? Is this still under review by the court? What might happen yet?
Well, so last week we went to court Tuesday, and we're waiting for Tuesday or Wednesday. We were waiting for a response. Actually, it was Wednesday, and we got one on Friday, and we got a motion to dismiss, which is really funny because the judge allowed us to present and heard everything. And basically it came down to two things. One, we didn't have standing, supposedly. I don't know how candidates don't have standing. I also don't know how Georgia voters don't have standing. So, I mean, this isn't something coming from people outside the state. I'm a voter. Regardless if I'm still in the race, it doesn't matter. I'm a Georgia voter. The other thing that was made me scratch my head, and David was scratching his head as well, is basically the secretary is what he's doing the night of the elections is not the conduct of elections. And they try to make this point in court that it really doesn't matter what happens at this hidden bunker. He doesn't have to do this to bring in the numbers. And it's like, I've never sat election night and not knew what the numbers were across the state. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
Chris, what's this judge's name?
I'm sorry, that I don't have off the top of my head.
Okay.
But I mean, it's so ridiculous, the response. I mean, we're going to appeal it. I mean, again, the fight kind of has to still go on. We are absolutely going to appeal it.
Yeah. Given the events of the California elections, there's been, I would, in my estimation, based on what I see happening across the country, a much broader now upheaval of concern because people can see things that they previously were, it was difficult to see. They were, the way the reporting happened, it would be difficult to look at different methods of voting and the discrepancies between those. There really shouldn't be any. There's when you look at large numbers, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of votes, and you start looking at groups of those in a given area, they have a tendency, no matter what group you look at, they have a tendency to play out quite closely to one another. And yet that didn't happen, especially in California. And I'm going to show something that indicates that might not have happened here in Georgia in 2020 as well. So here's an example. On Tuesday, after the polls closed in California, Karen Bass had 37% of the vote totals at that time. Spencer Pratt had 30%. I think it's Nithya Raymond had 20%. Now, those are, keep in mind, we're talking about at that time something like 250,000, a little bit more votes, 300,000 or so. And like many races in the past 5 years or longer, you saw counting going on for days. I remember when I was growing up, you could have a presidential election, you'd know the results by early the following morning. And so here we are in a county in, or the LA district in California. They're still counting 3 days later, 4 days later. And indeed, I believe they counted into the beginning of this week as well. Watch what happened, though. Look at this. Karen Bass ended up getting 35%. She went down 3% by Friday of last week. Spencer Pratt, though, look at his number. He went from 108,000 votes to 174 total with only 28%. But the real discrepancy, look at this Nithya Raymond. She was getting 20% and she went up to 25. That's quite surprising, and gained nearly double the number of votes. The other candidates didn't double. How could that be? Remember, law of large numbers. Percentages have a tendency to continue to play out. This is an example of Forsyth County in 2020, and I just happened to pick the senatorial race because I thought that was most important. This is as if you were looking at vote 1 to vote 137,000. That's how many people voted for the Kelly Loeffler Senate race in 2020. But what's most important is look at the relationship between lawns. Something happened right there when you see the absentee ballot count kick in. And this is simply by taking the types of voting and lining them up. Absentee votes were 24,000 of the total. But look at the effect they had. Loeffler dropped, Collins dropped. You can see that at the bottom, and then Warnock climbed dramatically, and you don't see it unless you can look at the various types of ballots. Look at the numbers when you look at them in numerics. It becomes even more apparent. Out of 24,000 votes, look at the percentage Warnock got out of the first two types: 18% and 15%. Out of absentee, he got 40, more than twice as much a percentage. These are not consistent with standard mathematical analysis. Now, people will attempt and have attempted to say, oh, well, this is just a different way of voting. But that doesn't make sense when you look at where the votes came from, I mean, even down to the precinct level. They all come from the same places.
Bill, may I interject? And I'm not going to say their names, but we had plenty of people running, especially, I know, here in North Georgia, that we didn't get visited once. They could care less about our votes, didn't show up, didn't send mailers. Some had 2 signs in the entire county, but yet they consistently won. And there was no incumbent, but yet they consistently won. I understand how the incumbent thing works, right? You have uninformed voters show up. They don't know who to vote for. They just check off the box for the incumbent. Now, these are races that I can't say that I've seen that happen over and over and over again, where they just picked the incumbent because they didn't know. But these were strangers. These were strangers to the folks here. And county after county, big numbers on people that weren't incumbents, didn't spend any time in the counties, didn't come speak to the people, didn't really see any advertising on TV. We see it now. I said, but can't figure out the large percentage of victory on some of these candidates that soared that no one knew about.
Right.
That it wasn't until after the election, after the primary, to go, what did they do to get all these people to vote for them? Something's not right.
People were calling out the notion that they seemed to be like Biden. They were hiding in basements and stuff, not doing very much.
Well, that is one thing.
Yet they get it. They get a substantial percentage of the vote. How?
That's one thing I learned. That's what I think I learned when you know, running for the 11th congressional district. I even made a joke about it, but actually it's not a joke. I feel like saying I just need to have a crap ton of money, go sit in my basement, hire a marketing person, make sure I got signs, TV advertisements, and mailers, and that's it. Stay away from going and talking with people, because that's obviously what's working to buy these seats. That is
Well,
what's
you left out something there. You have to have somebody in the election office as well. Just to be,
that very well may be. So here's another way of looking at this, and this is even more up to date data. This comes from Grok. We asked Grok, can you break out the mail-in portion of the voting? And very interestingly, I'm going to call out one line in here in a minute, but look again at the percentages. Karen Bass starts at 38%, ends up at 35%. Spencer Pratt starts at 28%, ends up at 19% in mail order ballots, arriving after Election Day. And Nithya Raymond starts out at 20% and ends up getting 37%. Now go back to what we just showed. Look at Warnock. Double the number of mail-in ballots compared to early and Election Day voting. And then look at this Nithya Raymond, just about double. That coincidence? Tough to convince me of that. And then also look at the very bottom line here. It says no source provides exact vote totals for mail-in votes for the entire race. Why would they not? This should be reporting election should be what's called a flat file in Excel language. Basically just line up all the votes, show who voted for, show who got what votes in what form, and you're done. And yet they hide them. They put them in PDF so you can't manipulate them and do your own calculations. They don't report the numbers at all, regardless of format in some cases. It gets unbelievable, and it gets unbelievable quickly.
We don't want people to be discouraged. And this has come up a couple times, especially in the last 2-3 days. We need people to show up and vote. We need the numbers. We need the data. If we're going to prove anything, you have to show up and vote. We cannot let one side just show up and vote. You can't prove anything. So I don't want anybody to be discouraged from voting. They still have to go out and vote, and you still got time.
We're running for office, for that matter.
That's right. I do very much agree with that. You cannot be discouraged. Matter of fact, there's David Clemens brought out a video today on the concept of endurance and being able to stay the course no matter what you see. And recall was one of the key themes of Trump's campaign. Never give up, never give in, never back down. Never, ever surrender.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're seeing now is, we've not been able to force change yet. Real change. We aren't on paper ballots. We haven't done away with the systems and such, but we cannot back off. We have to continue the pressure. Otherwise, we're relinquishing, the outcome ultimately, unless we're careful.
We got some races that could go to some very bad people if we don't show up and vote. So again, numbers are going to be small for this runoff.
Yeah,
every vote's going to count.
So we're done with early voting. The final vote is Tuesday. Is that correct for the runoffs?
Yep.
So all the more critical that people, when they look at this, say, "By gosh, I'm not relinquishing my name and number in here. I'm going to go out and do at least what I can."
Yep.
And if somebody down the road is playing games with these things, well, then eventually we're going to find it. But I will do my job on Tuesday. So.
Yep. Awesome.
What else are you seeing, Chris? What are you hearing from from the populace? Are they concerned? Are they noticing this? Are they getting it? What do you think?
Well, again, sometimes we live in a bubble, right? I mean, if I still go to party meetings and some smaller groups that meet within the counties. Mm-hmm. The one thing that was encouraging was at one last Thursday night, and we took a vote to see how many have gone out and actually voted, which sometimes the ones that have especially been fighting, it's very easy to get down and go, forget it, doesn't matter. In that room, 80% had already gone out and voted, which was good. We know we've got a problem, especially in the district that I live in, the district I ran for. We've got some not so great people that have a ton of money behind them and a ton of not good guys behind them either, trying to help push candidates in. So, we're trying to do what we can at the last minute to get people to show up and vote. So
we spent a lot of time in this cycle talking about the money behind folks, and there were cases, and in fact, they are, either they are into the general election now, or they are in runoffs, a number of them, and they were backed by organizations that we tracked down that are big gambling, hundreds of millions of dollars being poured in.
Medical. How many doctors are actually running for office? Take a look across the country. How many doctors and how much money is being pumped into their campaigns? It's kind of scary. You got to look even in my district. When I did my homework prior to running, I looked, and our existing congressman spent anywhere between $800,000 to $1 million. That's it, right? For this seat, for a job that pays $175,000 a year. Still blows me away. We're approaching between $3 and $4 million, and we haven't even reached the general yet. Wow. There's something wrong. And one of those candidates are going to owe a lot of people a lot of things. And if you think they care about us, you're crazy. If they're not showing up now, they're not showing up after the election if they win that seat.
That's
good
right.
Point. Very good point.
One of the commitments we've made week in and week out is no matter, now or, within the context of the runoff or after, we're going to continue to tell the truth about what we know about the background of these candidates. And, come hell or high water, people are going to know, even if they find themselves having to hold their nose and vote for somebody, they're going to know who they are, and they're going to know who's behind them. And hopefully that will give people pause before taking actions that are not in line with the best interests of those in Georgia.
People got to start calling out the behavior. I'm tired of sitting in meetings. I'm tired of showing up to these political events where, after 45 minutes of listening to them spew their whatever they want to tell us, everyone sits around and, oh, thank you so much for coming. It's like, no, why did you vote this way? Why did you vote this way? Why are you siding with we have to start challenging these people.
That's right. Why were you silent? Why were you silent on these key issues?
Yeah, I want to know why you're voting to, expand our debt. I want to know why you're providing cover and poisoning us with. There's so many things that we watch on a daily basis, and we let them off. They are just an elected official. They are no different than anybody else. They're doing a job. And they're not a celebrity. Who cares? They're nothing. They are supposed to be representing us, and that's it. And I'd still like to think that there are some people that are running that still believe that. But, again, we got to get money out. Something's got to be done about the money. Otherwise, we're going to have the same problem over and over and over again.
Yeah. Todd, other questions?
No, Chris, thanks for coming on. Very interesting comments. Appreciate it.
All right, Chris, please keep us posted. I bet we'll have you on as we get into these next phases. And thanks again for the work and the commitment to date.
Thank you, gentlemen. Fight on.
All right. See you next time. Want to take a break, Bill?
Yep, let's do that, and we'll come back.
We'll be right back.
If you haven't noticed, gold has reached a new high, all-time highs, actually, and keeps going up every day. Why is that? It's because precious metals are a long-time historical store of value. And if you own a portfolio and you have assets in the fiat currencies, i.e. stocks, bonds, cash, or whatever, you're vulnerable to hyperinflation, which is coming as our debt explodes another trillion every 90 days. It's really scary. So how do you protect yourself? Go to Advisor Metals. If you look on any of our cdm.press sites, about halfway down, there's an ad for Advisor Metals. Click on it, fill out the form for your contact info, and Ira Bishotsky will contact you and talk to you. It's an easy conversation. There's no sales pitch. He's completely verified by us. He has a regulatory background we've checked into. We've checked with his bankers. We've checked with his IRA custodians for metals, and we can highly recommend Advisor Metals and IRA. So go to Advisor Metals. If you call them directly, tell them we sent you at CDM, and he'll definitely take care of you. But protect your
With my 35 years of experience, our team at US Asset Management can deliver professional investment management, financial planning to help you target your goals, and even specialized divorce financial analysis if you need it. We are here to help you make better decisions with your money. Call US Asset Management today and let's get to work in your financial future.
All right, Bill, let's roll.
All right, we're going to take a little bit and we're going to push it toward the end of the show. It has to do with things happening with Trump and a fascinating historical perspective that I did not know, but I found out my beautiful wife knew about it because she has a degree in history and knew all about this. So we'll share that at the end of the show. Let's talk about the notion of fraud and savings and everything that came out of Doge. And Doge got a lot of bad press, but it was bad press from the people that were fighting to maintain the status quo in many cases and be able to say, oh, no, there's no fraud associated with USA. There's no fraud associated with these more than 1.5 million NGOs trading money back and forth across the country. And then as we learn more, we find out, whoa, these NGOs are being funded by money that goes into one NGO, then it goes to, for example, George Soros, then it goes from one of those NGOs to a different one and ends up in places like Indivisible, that is working against the the will of the people in many cases and trying to foment problems, much the same way that other organizations have in past years. What's interesting now is people are saying, well, wait a minute, Doge was largely a federal activity and led by Elon Musk and others, and they did a lot of work, uncovered quite a bit. The number that is currently being tossed around is 215 billion in total estimated savings. They've never gone to the extent of saying how much of that was fraud versus simply improper double payments or something else. But $250 billion is pretty good in size number. However, what if the real number, the big number, was not necessarily at the federal level, but would be below the federal level, perhaps at state, county, and local levels all the way across the country? It's a daunting proposition, a daunting, if you want to call it a theory, but studies have already begun emerging that suggest that that indeed is the case. So what is the possible savings to go the next level down, and how would you do that? There's an initiative going on this week in, believe it or not, Las Vegas, Nevada, and it's called the Fraud Fighter Summit. And it's being brought together by a group of organizations and a group of individuals to look into, well, what are the areas of potential fraud that are going on currently and have been in bond fraud, in corporate and government waste, in corporate scams. We just heard from David Cate in these last couple of weeks about corporate scams to defraud money out of Medicare and other health concerns. And so the Fraud Fighter Summit is the beginning of putting structure around knowledge and action to uncover and go after these other areas of fraud. Should be very interesting. I was alerted to this and will be in attendance during the summit Monday through Wednesday of this week. It's fascinating, and the group of speakers is quite broad. Everybody from Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's invited, I don't know if he's speaking, but I believe he is, to Eduardo Bolsonaro from Brazil. And these folks will, and David Clemens, one of our friends of the channel and friends to our initiatives, they'll be talking about their perspectives on what these areas of fraud may be, how to identify them, how to size them, how to identify who's involved, and how to begin doing the activities necessary to clean this up where it's found. It's going to be a pretty lengthy set of discussions. And what's also interesting is there is a documentary that's been put forward regarding um, Bolsonaro's run and the background to it that not many people know. And I think that will be fascinating. That will be an exclusive screening on Monday evening. I suspect this is going to make it into the regular movie theaters and so forth, but apparently there's going to be a sneak view of this, much the same way that they did with Sound of Freedom and a couple other movies in past. And this should be very interesting. What I will commit to our listeners is when both during the event and when I return, we'll be taking pieces of this that we see and have already, in many cases, found to be in play in Georgia. And we're going to pass along the knowledge and education necessary for folks to take this to the next level where it needs to be here in Georgia. Don't know what format that's going to look like. It may be multiple hour-long seminars or something like that we provide through the network. But we will get this information out to the folks so that where it needs to be applied, where it needs to be investigated, it can be. And that is our commitment going forward. So should be a fascinating week. And I was very honored to be to be alerted and invited to go to this event. With that, Todd, let me flip it over to you, and then if we can come back toward the very end, I'll have a couple things to share about what's going on with Trump.
Sure. So I sat down with Andrew Huff. Dr. Huff has been all over. He was attacked heavily during the COVID pandemic, and we've interviewed him in the past. He's the guy famously who was attacked by the local sheriff's office, and he called the sheriff's, he was attacked by people at his house, and he called the sheriff, said somebody's spying on me at my house, and they called him. The sheriff said, "Let me call my deputy," and the deputy was in the bushes spying on him at his house. So anyway, Huff has had a long history of fighting the federal government, and he has something to say on monkeypox and some other things. This interview is on our Rumble and YouTube channels. I had it a few days ago, but very interesting. I won't play the whole thing. He also talks about AI and some other stuff. Very smart man, which I came to realize. So here we go with this. And then at the end of this, we'll take a few ads and then flip it back to you, Bill.
Up here in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, which is a rare thing, and I'm getting a lot of work done. I've been super productive lately. I've actually been developing some new machine learning, artificial intelligence techniques, and some advanced quantitative statistics. Things have been real quiet in my life, and I'm loving it.
You're up in the UP. Where at in the UP, man?
West of Marquette, about 40 minutes.
I spent all my summers in Carp Lake, right off of south of Mackinac there. Actually, it's called Paradise Lake now.
Yeah, I know exactly what it is. It's great vacation territory. There's a lot more people over there. It's more social, even though the tourist activity typically picks up around my neck of the woods the next week or two, and then it's pretty busy through August, and then I never see a soul again.
Well, my family homesteaded up there after the Civil War from the Pennsylvania regulars. And then so they built that whole town of Carp Lake, but now it's completely different. Anyway, enough of that. Enough family history. I wanted to talk to you about, first, I wanted you on because of monkeypox. This thing is shocking. We put out the story from Children's Health Defense that these guys were caught bringing in monkeypox into the U.S. What the heck is going on with that, man?
Well, it's really the same thing that's been going on for a long time. And when I say a long time, so I entered the field of infectious disease epidemiology effectively around 2011. And, when you're a young doctoral student, you're starting to get the feeling of what's going on. And, come to find out that a number of scientists across academia and in the government and in the private sector smuggle agents in the United States. I had met professors that were on watch lists for smuggling tree fungi. Other scientists that frequently visited foreign farms, which were known to have different types of foreign animal disease. So this particular case is very interesting because one of the doctors who was arrested was actually on the DARPA preempt, and preempt was part of the DARPA preempt program on something called the diffuse proposal, which is really the recipe for SARS-CoV-2. So a lot of these scientists, they just believe that they're above the law. And factually or objectively, many are not held accountable for their activities. I'm really happy to see that there's been a lot more enforcement action from USDA, APHIS, or APHIS it's called, Animal Plant Health Inspection Service. I'll try not to drop too many acronyms here, and the Department of Homeland Security. And really, I'm really happy that the Department of Justice and the FBI is finally doing something about these cowboy infectious disease scientists, pathologists that are bringing these harmful agents into the country. Now, some people will argue, and I've already had some pushback from a few scientists in my field saying, well, the monkeypox was deactivated. Well, that's really not the point. So the point is we have rules, regulations, and laws. And the fact is this Munster guy is a scientist at Rocky Mountain Laboratory. Okay, he's a well-known figure. He's a government official. How long do you think it would take him to file the proper paperwork to get this disease transportation approved? I mean, a week?
Not long. Yeah,
a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So it begs the question then, why are these people trying to evade regulation of transportation of infectious agents, even if they're deactivated? I don't care. You have to look at this from the Department of Homeland Security's perspective or APHIS's perspective. You have some people, you don't know who they are. You're in law enforcement. You're not staying up on, all the different scientists smuggling agents around the planet, but you have names on lists. These people come through with some containment, some equipment through the security checkpoint. First, they lie and they're deceptive about what they're carrying. How do you think someone who works in law enforcement responds to that? So they say they don't say that they're carrying vital specimens. I think they said they're carrying some kind of other type of equipment. Well, they're running through the X-ray machine. They start to dig into it and they find little vials full of things.
Wow.
When they have no clue what it is, and I actually used to teach a residency program with DVM students at the Detroit airport where this happened, in partnership with DHS and Customs and Border Patrol and USDA APHIS, really teaching them that there's a lot of different occupations outside of veterinary medicine that they get into. But if you go back into the storage area at that airport where they store all the different crazy things that people try to smuggle in the United States, you have all sorts of contraband. So you have actual real ivory, ivory tusks from rhinos, rare turtles, sea fish. I mean, it really runs a list. I mean, monkey heads. I mean, it's really nuts, the things that people tried to smuggle back in the United States. And these are people who should have known better. They should have filed the paperwork. And hopefully this investigation leads to more investigation about this person's activities.
Well, it's been an issue. I mean, you had the Chinese doing it. You had this guy caught out in LA with all kind of different biospecimens in a lab. You had, multiple professors arrested. What is the goal? Or is it so nefarious they're trying to bring in bioweapons, or is it they're trying to advance their careers by having something to work on? What do you think?
Well, so I've taken a hard look at the biolabs, so the so-called secret biolabs in California and Las Vegas. First of all, there is no law preventing you or I from having a biological laboratory in our house. A lot of people who work in animal health have what we consider a BSL level 1 or BSL level 2 laboratory. Your dentist's office is technically a BS level 2 environment. It is not a crime to have a biolab. Now, just because someone writes on the side of the sample container HIV, COVID, monkeypox, doesn't mean that agent's actually in there.
Yeah.
And the thing that I noticed right away looking at the photos of these so-called biolabs, it was very novice. It didn't have the right type of equipment that I would have had at one time in my bacteriology, my parasitology laboratory to store and process these samples correctly. It had a lot of crap and it was disorganized. And the telltale sign is that usually to at least preserve viral agents, you have to store them in a negative 80 degrees centigrade freezer.
Yeah.
That's extremely cold. Okay. And these freezers that they were storing these agents in were just not at that level. Those freezers are very expensive. If you start buying those up rapidly, you might catch the attention of the FBI or another organization, because if you're not working at a pharmaceutical company or a university, you start buying all these negative 80 centigrade freezers, someone may ask the question, well, what is this person up to here? So the viability or the threat posed by that type of laboratory is relatively low. And think about it, COVID's everywhere now. Like COVID's endemic in the human population. Everyone's been exposed to it. So is it really a big deal if you have a COVID sample sitting on the counter? It's everywhere. The real question becomes is, do they have the technology in place to weaponize or do something nefarious? And that's where in the field of biodefense things get tricky, because not all agents are easily weaponized. Some are more difficult to weaponize. And when you start getting into that territory, that's where things can get sketchy. But there's no indication that anything like that was happening in those laboratories. I think it was just a big fear campaign, both on the left and the right, so to speak, in the media. They're hungry for these type of stories. On the right, they're saying, oh, look, it's another biolab, they're up to bad things. And on the left, it catches their attention because, hey, there's another risk of a disease spreading. Let's pump the fear on that. So really, you've got two different kind of mentalities in the press coming together around that one issue. And that's what I think what's going on there.
Another uniparty action. Interesting. Really interesting. Really interesting insight.
Well, maybe not so much uniparty, but the complete opposite tails of the distribution. Not so much maybe in the middle, but on the far left and the far right coming together on that issue.
Interesting. You mentioned AI. That is front and center right now. Trump wants to take a position in open AI for the American people. You've got China, really, I think it was $300 billion effort to ramp up their data center operations. What are you doing in AI? You mentioned that in the beginning.
Yeah, so I'm actually one of the pioneers in AI. Most people don't know that about me. I've been working with machine learning, is what we technically call it. I don't even believe that this thing that we call AI today is AI. It's advanced natural language processing with some agentic properties, meaning we're making agents out of it. But that doesn't really constitute AI. As Turing talked about, the scientists who coined the term artificial intelligence, it doesn't have a general intelligence yet. That being said, I began working on these types of approaches when I was a PhD student. There was sort of a tipping point where the most advanced thing in mathematics was something called the Markov chain model, and they're still used today. Then it really started getting to random forest and these other types of more mechanized approaches to processing large sets of data. Big data used to be the rage back then. I published a number of seminal papers in the field of natural language processing. I actually did this on Department of Defense funding while I was employed at EcoHealth Alliance. But really, it's that portfolio work started at San Diego National Laboratories, and I can't talk about that work. It's restricted information. And I've just continued to work on it over the years, and I've been sort of a critic, or not really a critic, but a skeptic of the claims that all the different AI companies make. I had a really solid foundation of research methods and statistics training. And I think that's where the best data science and AI people and best scientists in the world come out, because you can really take that foundation, you can apply it to any problem, any domain. It's universal. And I came to find, I did a study and I was curious. I started hearing the term, seeing the term a lot, garbage in, garbage out, when I was a PhD student. And what that means is if you got garbage data, but the perfect model, you'll have garbage come out of it. And the opposite is also true. But if you have the perfect data, but a screwed up model, garbage will come out of it. So that's where the term garbage in, garbage out comes from. So when people are talking about AI slop and bad results from all these different chat AIs and things going on, that's sort of the fundamental flawed process that's occurring. It's getting a lot better. I have a lot of interest in sort of the validity of AI. So there's two different types of aspects of things that we care about. Is the philosophy of science. The first is reliability. So do you get the same answer every time you ask it the same question? And if you play with AI, it's not always exactly reliable.
So true. True.
So that's actually one of its top performing areas.
Especially if you challenge it, man. I mean, it's like, did you really say that? Oh yeah, you're right. Here's what I really meant. I mean, that's like total.
Yeah, so that gets this thing talking about the priors, the statistical priors in the model, how it works. That means the information it has before it does the analysis changes when you continue to prompt it. So when you're working with, Claude or ChatGPT, whichever one is your favorite, they use these different types of neural nets, the more sophisticated models. And, I don't know exactly how they have those tuned. I'd have to go read like the specific technical paperwork, so like which model you're paying for and which level of processing you get. But these neural nets, these convolutional neural nets, you tweak it a little bit and it sends it down a completely different path of we're supposed to sort of mimic neurons in our brain, right? So typically in reliability to the AI, if you make it real specific, will generate the same answer all the time. Now, this concept of validity, though, means, is the answer real, or was the information that it's giving you real? And that's a challenge. What the human brain does is we have this ability to process information and put it in context. And so as a psych undergrad, and I think that's what sort of gives me an advantage in some ways about how I think about these advanced quantitative problems, because humans, we have two things. We have something called heuristics, and the other thing we have schemas. So heuristics is the fancy term basically for our rule system of how we view the world. And the schema is the framework of our experience filtered through the heuristics together to give us reasoning. Okay? Well, AI doesn't have that yet. And I don't know how they're going to get there. I was drafting up some sort of, I guess, pre-publication kind of work of how I would build a reasoning engine. And that's my next area where I'm going to push this to, and then we'll see where it goes. I just published a paper, a statistical paper, on it's called a temporary adaptive cluster. And you're going to be like, what the heck does this mean? Well, what that means is it's a cluster analysis. It's highly predictive at predicting the next sequence of events into the future. So I might have the best method in the world on that. It's under peer review right now. I filed a provisional patent on it. But back to what I think we're really getting here. So I'm just laying the foundation here for my expertise in AI. So I've worked in high performance computing, all these different aspects of it. The AI bubble. Is it real? And I started to ask myself that question about a week and a half ago. And the thing that I found, so I built what's called a system dynamics model to analyze this objectively. And really, there's two different points of failure in the system. If NVIDIA goes down, the system goes down, or if OpenAI goes down, the system could go down. And I've been publishing a lot of this on Twitter and talking about it. And I don't know if I was helping feeding the concern, but shortly thereafter, President Trump or the White House announced that they were going to meet with a lot of the leading tech AI ecosystem folks to then invest into those companies to maybe hopefully de-risk them some.
And take, what gets me is, I've seen this talked about a lot recently, is a lot of these companies essentially harvested all our data off the net, scraped it all, put it in computers, and without any copyright protection, and now are just selling it back to us.
Oh no, it's terrible. So
yeah,
there's a website up for this, and my book, actually, The Truth About Wuhan, was illegally scraped by Meta. And I found out there's a class action lawsuit, and I have to go check probably here in a couple of weeks and send them a letter and saying that I'm withdrawing from class action. And I sent them a demand notice for $25 million. I don't think I'd get that much out of it. But I mean, the point is, if humans and people, and we're generating intellectual work and property, and Dr. Brett Weinstein and Dr. Eric Weinstein have also discussed this on social media. If our brains are the ones that are creating all this new information, and then it just gets scraped by an AI, I mean, we should be compensated for that.
Yes.
It's no
Well, in the
different
case
than,
of hydroxychloroquine
artists,
and ivermectin, these are two medications that have been FDA approved for use in humans for decades. They are very, very inexpensive. Interestingly, available over the counter in almost every other country other than the US and Canada. You can just walk into a pharmacy and buy them like we buy Tylenol in much of the world because they're that safe. And we've known for decades that ivermectin has very strong antiviral properties. It has anti-inflammatory properties, and both ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are what we call zinc ionophores. They help to move zinc from the bloodstream into the cell, which is where it needs to be in order to fight off a virus. So lots of application for these, and we have every reason to believe that those drugs also will likely have some efficacy against H5N1 or a number of other respiratory viruses that we may meet down the road.
This is Bert Jones. He says he's got nothing to do with the billion-dollar data center.
Guess what? Here it is. Here it is.
But this is the lane next to Bert's daddy. And this is a zoning application for a billion-dollar data center developed by Bert's daddy's company. A massive data center filed right there in Butts County. Right there by family property. Right there where Bert told you nothing was happening.
It's just lies, lies, lies.
Bert Jones isn't stupid. He just thinks you are.
All right, there's Bill back. Let me give a shout out to the Wellness Company. A groundbreaking new study shows that there is a safe and inexpensive potential cancer treatment, and it's a drug that many of us already know about, ivermectin. This new study shows that individuals who took ivermectin, the parasite-fighting medication that gained fame during the COVID pandemic, along with the drug mebendazole, saw remarkable results in their battles with cancer. This incredibly promising results have many Americans wondering where they can obtain U.S.-made ivermectin and mebendazole. That's where the Wellness Company comes in. You see and hear from TWC doctors all the time here on CDM, and you know that their products are the gold standard for keeping you and your family safe and healthy. The Wellness Company is making 100% American-made ivermectin and mebendazole available to our audience at an incredible, affordable price point. Say no to Big Pharma's greed and no to Big Pharma's poisons, and say yes to a company that you can trust to bring your safe, affordable, and effective treatments. If you or someone you love is interested in trying ivermectin and mebendazole, then I urge you to go to twc.health/CDM today and order. That's twc.health/CDM. Use promo code CDM. Save 10%. Back to you, Bill.
Okay. That last report was fascinating. And one of the topics was the bio labs that have been discovered all over the world, 30 or 40, I believe, in and around Ukraine. And one of the things that, and it comes from folks at the McCullough Foundation. I think somebody from the Wellness Company may have said this too. The issue is not the existence of these. The issue often centers around what is the function, what is the research area that they're involved with. When it has to do with gain of function, adding capability to viruses or other bioactive mechanisms, that's where the concern comes in, because it's kind of like building a better bomb. That's great, except you never know how good it's going to be until one blows up, and all of a sudden you can realize you may have done something that was not intended, or maybe in certain nefarious groups it might have been intended. So that's where the Warriors come in. All right, we're at a very interesting weekend. We wanted to make sure that we acknowledged the birthday of our president. He is reaching 80 today, so happy birthday, Mr. President, and many more, sir. I have to tell you, for a gentleman that's 80 years old, he looks good. It looks pretty darn good, and has more energy many days than I seem to. So we're happy for that and hope that all continues. One of the things that also will happen today is the UFC fight on the grounds of the White House, and it should be fascinating. The buildup to this has been amazing, and people are, virtually nobody not talking about this right now, and it should be very notable. It'll be an interesting event to watch and so forth. But the other thing is, people don't realize that this is not the first time that a president has had, I'll call it pugilistic or fight type activities at or in the White House itself. Back during Teddy Roosevelt's day, he would invite people in to keep him sharp and trim when it came to fighting. Let's listen to this.
The landmark event we're witnessing tonight is not entirely without precedent. At the dawn of the 20th century, America's commander-in-chief, Theodore Roosevelt, brought fight sports to the White House. He often invited boxers, wrestlers, and martial artists, but not for entertainment or exhibition. They were summoned here to spar with the president. Roosevelt said, "A nation that cannot fight is not worth its salt." So he trained like a fighter throughout his presidency, leading by example. living what he called the strenuous life. Not everyone likes the idea of fights at the White House. But as Teddy Roosevelt famously said, it is not the critic who counts. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly.
Fascinating little piece that I wanted to share with everybody. That's it, and we will have more during this week, as we said. And you'll be on Skiff tomorrow morning. Is that right, Todd?
Yeah, 10 to noon. We got a heck of a show tomorrow lined up. It's going to be a full 2 hours, 10 a.m. Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern on the Skiff. Join us to get your daily intel brief. Thank you, Bill.
That's great. All right. I think that's it for today. We will look forward to seeing people on the Georgia show on Wednesday, we believe. That may be impacted by the event that I just got through describing, but we will see. And we'll have more for you throughout the week. Thanks very much.